All right, everybody, good evening and welcome guests and welcome to all of our viewers at home participating in the March caucus. Before we get started, congratulations and welcome to Mrs. Amy Reed, who will be joining us as our latest and newest school board member in our team of 10. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Amy Reed. All right, so super excited to welcome some guests, some VIPs to our caucus meeting this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mark Hamilton, principal at the elementary school, to welcome our guests.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fox. We have our four fourth graders here from our student advisory committee. They're super excited. They signed up for this to come in here and give you guys a little presentation. So I'm going to throw it over because Mrs. Mann told me that they are ready to introduce themselves. So Mrs. Mann, our advisor, is going to hand it over to them.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be here to highlight some of our amazing students. And I'm going to turn it over to our students to introduce themselves.
I'm Avery. I'm Natalie. I'm Devlin. I'm Everett.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. All right, so we are the fourth grade Student Advisory Council, and every student in fourth grade gets the opportunity to sign up for a job. And some of our jobs are breakfast buddies, news anchor, innovation helpers, and these students decided to sign up because they lead with their hearts. They want to do acts of service to our school and community. So we have 17 students in total, and they serve on one of 3 committees. They have a teacher spirit committee, fundraising committee, and a poster committee. And the committees are really just an opportunity for the students to sign up for something that they're interested in. Does one of you want to talk about the committees? All right, Mr. Everett has decided to talk about the committees.
The Teacher Spirit Committee is basically just teacher spirit. The Fundraising Committee is for fundraisers and getting money and hats, and that's later. So the Poster Committee is to make posters for events that we're doing or other stuff. And those are the committees.
Good job, Everett. Yes. So poster committee really is to just highlight things that we're doing around the school, spirit weeks, things like that, fundraising, and we're going to get into a little bit later, as Everett has mentioned. Teacher spirit really is just to applaud our teachers and just encourage them because we love our teachers. All right, next slide, please. All right, the hat day that Everett was referencing. Okay, and I think I'm going to turn that over to Devlin to talk about the hat day.
The Hat Day is about collecting hats for Operation Warm Hearts, and you can donate a hat or $1 to the Project Hat Day.
Right, and that was held back earlier in the fall, and the students did a really nice job collecting money and just trying to promote that event. And as you can see from the slideshow, we collected over 60 hats. And we were asking students and staff to donate $1 to the cause, and we ended up raising over $126. So good job. We really appreciated all those who participated in that event. And you can see our lovely students there going around with their bags collecting the hats and the money. All right, next slide, please. And I think this one is Avery or Everett or Natalie. Who wants to talk about that one? I think that was Mr. Everett again.
Which one should I do? So on the left, the poster committee was making a poster for the teachers and also setting letters out. So they made, yeah. The picture on the right is from a video that everyone participated in. And we were thanking the teachers for everything that they've done.
Yes. just like Everett said, around the holidays, we thank the teachers for just doing a great job with everything that they're doing to help us learn, and that was around the holidays. And we also ended up doing a really nice poem, and I think we're going to advance to the next slide. All right, and this one is Miss Devlin.
So me and the third graders made a video about the cafeteria high five values, and they were showing the high five values in the cafeteria.
So Miss Devlin did that on her own, and she did a really nice job stating all the high five values in the cafeteria, and that was also displayed on our news on Friday. So thank you, Devlin, for demonstrating all of that. All right, and next slide, please. And this was our latest fundraiser. We asked our staff and teachers to contribute a photo of their pets. And what we did was we donated all of the money to the Perry County Animal Rescue. This was a wonderful activity. This was done around the Super Bowl. So we put all the pets that were contributed to the cause into different categories. We had pet categories such as SES MVP and most likely to score a touchdown. So these were fun categories that all the staff and students could vote on, and this was a really fun fundraiser, and I think we raised, I'd have to get the actual numbers, but I think we raised over $150 to that cause, so good job, Student Advisory Council, for promoting that fundraiser. It was a really fun event. All right, next slide, please. All right, and Miss Natalie.
These were the certificates that we earned for a job well done.
Okay, and Avery, do you want to talk about what that was for?
It was for Operation Warm Hearts.
Okay, so they were really thankful for the job that we did, and they wanted to make sure all the students received a congratulatory certificate. So I think that is the last slide. So if anyone has any questions for our students, you may ask them.
First, just a great job. Holy cow. First of all, to take that leadership role within your school, we're extremely proud. And continue that leadership within our school district. I know right now our middle school principal has a big smile because he knows, within a year or so you're going to be up at the middle school, and there's going to be that continued leadership roles for you within student council. So he's smiling, and I know, and our high school principal's smiling too, because that leadership continues to evolve. And great job of being a part and taking that ownership in leading and demonstrating such great skills and being role models for your peers. So give yourselves a round of applause. I was going to say hats off to you, but I thought that would be a bad dad joke. So.
And I just wanted to tell you, we have one 11th grade student and one 12th grade student who come to our normal school board meetings, and they advise the school board on things they would like to see happen in school. So as you get older, keep in mind, you could be advisors to this board where you would sit there in 11th or 12th grade, and we would love to have you come back to do that and help us to know what we need to do best.
All right. Thank you for having us here, and I'm extremely proud of all of the students. And there are some students that wanted to be here this evening but couldn't because they had other obligations. So very proud of all of our students.
And guess what? You don't have to stay through the whole meeting if you don't want to. It'll probably go past bedtime.
Well, that was just outstanding and a great way to certainly start our meeting. As we segue into the next item is, as we review the agenda for March 12th, 2024's regular school board agenda, we do have some resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment. Unfortunately, under personnel, we have some retirements. So congratulations in order to Mr. Steve Fisher, who's going to retire after 28 years of dedicated service to Susquenita School District. We have Kathy Kisner, who's going to retire after 37 dedicated years of service to the school district as well. Sue Wagner, retiring from the middle school after 34 years of dedicated service to our school district. And Robert Warmer, who has been with the district for 13 years. When you add all those together, it is an extreme amount of dedication, service, and commitment, and outstanding years, and the positive influence that each of them have had on our students and on our district community. So before I go any further, I think we certainly want to give them a round of applause. And we will be sending out substitute teaching applications to all of them to go ahead and enroll. They all have a lot more in the tank to give, and we know they will still be active members of our school community, and we will absolutely welcome them in any way, shape, and form they can to continue. Under employment, Jennifer Cromley from Marysville as a non-instructional aide. She's going to help us out in the library. She's going to be working with Mrs. Davis to making sure that the library stays in operational order and welcomes students in when students come for various trips within the middle school library. Leave of absence, we have Noelle Giselle, our gifted teacher. She's going to exercise FMLA leave beginning May 20th to the end of the school year. Co-curricular assignment, we have Lizzie Black, high school musical producer. And that rounds out resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment. And going to agenda items and staying along with the same, we have capital area intermediate unit budget. The operating budget for the 2024-25 reflects our estimated contribution as a school district of $15,113. The good news is for next school year, it is an estimated increase of 0%. So it remained a flatline budget item for the contributions that we have in accordance to the school code to participate as part of the capital area intermediate unit. We have a motion to approve a debt resolution, and the debt resolution on here is to basically self-reimburse ourselves. If we were to go out for at least our Cumberland Perry career and technical education contribution, which is $1.38 million, if we do not get that debt loan finalized, what we can do before our July payment, one of our July payments is due, we can issue this debt resolution, debt self-payment resolution, I'm mincing my words, I apologize, is allow us the chance with this resolution to repay ourselves back if we go out for the loan for at least that amount or any greater amount that we desire. That gives us time to finalize, because it does take time to finalize any type of bank loan or debt, upwards to 75 plus days.
So you're saying that we would pull that money out of our reserve or general fund, and then we would be able to put it back in there? That's allowed, that we could do that? Cool.
Yes, with that resolution.
Okay.
Yep. We have agenda item for board meeting schedule, and that is on our caucus meeting that we'll go over. Just looking at already the 24-25 school year and designating some of our meeting dates. And of course, we can add additional meetings as needed and as desired as we progress. But those allow us the chance to post those, get those approved, and get those out for advertising. We have a motion for second reading of policy 702.1, which first reading was last month in February, which is our sponsorship policy. We have a discipline committee recommendation for recommendation 11.2, 911, which is the student information number. We'll have updates coming up from the Black Hawk Foundation and Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. And that rounds out agenda items for the month of March. If there are no questions, I will turn it over to my colleague next to me, Mr. Holmes, for a review of finances. Please be nice to Mr. Holmes. He's not feeling very well. So I'm going to scooch you over on this side.
Thank you. Under the revenues, board information, you will see that through the end of February, the 29th, we had collected $21,810,905, which represented 66.23% of our estimated revenues for the year. And under expenditures, we've expended $20,774,337.84, which equates to 61.98% of our anticipated expenditures for the year.
I think it's safe to say that it's pretty normal for this time of year in terms of revenue collection and expenditures.
Yes.
All right. We're going to go ahead. If there's any questions, no questions for Mr. Holmes, we're going to turn it over to Curriculum Instruction and Assessment with Ms. Snyder for any updates for the CIA.
Thanks, Dr. Fox. I like being a part of the CIA. Just a couple things to bring up regarding curriculum and instruction. I just want to take a moment and recognize that we are currently in National School Social Workers Week. And I'd love to take a moment and recognize Mrs. Micah Lafikis, who is our district social worker that we contract with the CAIU with for her services. And we had her start last year, and we've had her about a year and a half in the district, and she's done a wonderful job at creating a social worker program for us. So I'd really like to just make sure we recognize her efforts and services this week. Also this week, coming up on March 7th, this Thursday at Susquenita Elementary School, we have pre-K night or preschool night. Just making mention that to any of our incoming kindergarten families, you are welcome to attend and visit classrooms and hear from several key support areas within our school. So we're really looking forward to welcoming a lot of families on Thursday evening. Also want to take just a little bit to mention what's coming up this summer for professional learning for our teachers and staff members. We mentioned last month we are working heavily on our Lifted 2024 conference, which will be held on June 11th. And we're really excited just to welcome all of our teachers and staff to come enjoy this day, free professional development day, filled with just different activities and our exciting speaker, Erin Murphy. So we're really excited to have that. And we're also working currently on our Summer Trade Day catalog, which we hope to release next month to our staff, where they can start to take a look at some different options that they can sign up for during the summer. And finally, I am just heading into busy season with getting ready for several key monitoring things that I'll be working with different admin staff on. ESSER monitoring, ESSA monitoring, which is all of our title programs, and homeless or McKinney-Vento monitoring. So we've got a busy season, next couple months until the end of the year. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Quigley. Thank you, Mr. Quigley, first and foremost, for taking a look at the Coaches Matrix, providing some updates, some recommendations that you may have on the Coaches Matrix, the reason why you're currently taking a look at that, and what you may be proposing to be able to perhaps bring some simplification to the Coaches Matrix.
There it is. With my luck, it'll cut out multiple times. So what I've given you is the number page, don't get shocked, of what the current salary matrix is, and then the proposal. The other page is I gave you what the current matrix makeup is, or how these numbers were determined. And on the back of the page, I'll go over then my rationale for why I'm coming to you this evening. The numbers are a lot to take in, okay, when we look at salaries and everything else. And in the old one, just to explain, none of it is even, none of it is balanced, if that's lack of a better term, other than between head coaches in programs. Girls head basketball coach and boys head basketball coach, same amount of money, okay? Baseball and softball, same. Track, girls and boys, and that one's changed a little bit, same, okay? But between programs are vast differences. And if you look at that page I gave you with the justification, the numbers in the base salary from the matrix were determined by these factors: length of the regular season, number of assistants, total students at the high school level, although that was made just a generic number for every program, and then the team profile consisting of revenue, community expectations, number of spectators, number of athletes, and length of season. Well, if you look at some of those things, some of that are just arbitrary. And I'll give you some personal things as I come through here. When I became head baseball coach, I went to the current athletic director. I said, I was talking about this. I said, we have a brand new boys soccer coach with no experience, young, making more than my head baseball coach and the varsity softball coach. Why is that? Well, numbers of kids. And at the time, my baseball program had 35 kids in it. It was the biggest, other than track, it was the biggest program of any sport. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, part of it's revenue. Well, we don't charge for spring sports. How's that fair? I mean, so it's all those things that we started talking about, fairness and equity, and now Title IX is going to come into this as well. So the more I sat and over my tenure as that baseball coach, and then when I became the AD, talking to other head coaches and talking to colleagues around, asking how they did things, and a lot of it just doesn't make sense. So to look at the numbers a little bit, okay? I gave you what the base salary from the matrix is for the head coach and the assistants right now. The second column is the current amounts that those people are making. And I have a color copy, you guys don't, but the little shaded area is what the current head coach is, and that's based on, in a sport, based on the length he or she has been there, so the experience factor and all those things built in. And that all comes down to what tier the sports were. Okay, there were 4 tiers, football being the highest. Then you had field hockey and wrestling, then basketball and soccer, and then track, baseball, softball, cross country, tennis, and cheer were tier 4. And then depending on how long you were there, it was based on the head coach's increase in pay based on what tier they were. So when you factor all those things in, okay, and I said, each was awarded a point value. The point value was $54.72 per point. I have no idea where that came from. And then so you multiplied that by this point system they used, and then plus the experience, and that's where those salaries came from in the existing matrix. Head coaches got increases, assistants never did. And one of the ways around that, some head coaches would take part of their salary to pay a volunteer because you wanted more than the staff that you were allotted. When I started baseball, it was the head coach and 2 assistants. We increased that the other year basically, so when the JV was away and something happened, we had another coach, a paid coach is there if we had to do that. We did the same thing with softball. Another issue you used to have is boosters would pay the volunteers. The only problem you had there was if baseball boosters paid a volunteer coach and softball boosters didn't, that becomes an equity issue. So all these factors are playing into this. Why did one head coach get more than another? Why did some programs get more than others? Why did seasons, fall, winter, why were they all different? So my objective in doing this was to try to basically create a system of equality. I go in here, the reasons for change. Create a clean system, equitable and compliant with regulations. And we talk about compliant with regulations, Title IX can be thrown in there. Because that could be also just not between programs, but between, a head coach is a head coach of a varsity program. I've had the luxury, if you want to say it, of coaching 3 different sports throughout my career. That was football, basketball, and baseball, if you wondered. Okay? Each one has its challenges, but they're all equally challenged. They're all equally difficult. And some of you, I know, have coached, from youth programs and everything else. I know some of you have coached varsity programs. People back here. It's not easy. There's all things as a head coach you have to do. So a head coach is a head coach with all the springs of the umbrella that you've got to cover. So when I became baseball head coach, I questioned, so why is football get $2,000 more than the spring sports? So what I'm proposing is trying to eliminate those things. I have a structure that allows the head coach to have expanded coaching staffs. We have done that. You have given us, you have given me the opportunity to have my coaches do that this year. Football was the first big example. They came in, current staff, current head coach said, hey, I've got these 9 guys that want to do this. Can we just take the pool of money and split it between 10 of us? You allowed that. We're currently doing that with track. We did it with some of our soccer programs, our varsity boys soccer program. 2 guys stepped up and we split the assistant's position. We did that in junior high last year with boys soccer, where we split some positions so we get more paid people there to help the overall program. If coaches are paid employees of the districts, that would eliminate volunteer coaches. And what that allows us to do is to have, I hate to use the word control, but it gives us more control over that person. They can do more things for us. We can put a paid coach on a bus for supervision. Okay, we can do multiple things, or if something occurs within the program, we have steps because they are a paid employee. They are one of our employees that now we can take actions if we need to. And this also allows for pay increases for all coaches, just not the head coach. And then we'll get into doing that. So if you look at the numbers on the chart, okay, I know some of these are, okay, most are increases. I set the head coaching standard at $4,500 for every head coach. $4,500 per head coach into the pool of money for the program. The top assistant, that could be your JV coach. It could be your 8th grade basketball coach in the boys basketball program. It could be his top assistant, whatever, or her top assistant, whatever they do. And put that $3,750, and then the other assistants are $3,250. I based it on, or the pool number of those numbers, I based on the amount of existing coaches currently in the matrix. Boys basketball has 4 coaches in their program. Most of our programs have 4. 2 at the varsity, 2 at the junior high. Football has 6, and that goes way back when we used to have junior high football, 4 at the varsity, 2 junior high, and when the junior high program was sort of done away with, they kept the same amount of coaches with the hope that junior high program would come back one day. That's why football has 6 coaches. Track, we're changing a little bit, and this year it would be great if we could find a 4th assistant to go with the head coach. We currently have 114 kids signed up for track and field this year. 114. Got physicals for it. Now, we'll probably end up in the high 80s because some kids just don't come out and things like that. But with 4 coaches, that's a lot of kids. So when you look down through the pools, I calculated 1 head coach, 1 top assistant, 2 assistants for all but a couple of the programs. So that pool of money basically comes out to $1,470 or $750. The far right is the change from the existing pot of money per program to the new proposed pot of money per program. That's that number over to the right. Now, there are some new things added. The biggest one, and I know you have a black and white copy, is the cheer team. If I can get my papers separated. I color-coded mine, but there is the cheer season the last 2 years, to give you my rationale for this. The last 2 years, we've had a competition, a competitive spirit. It's not even called cheerleading. We have sideline cheer, we have competitive spirit. Our competitive spirit team has qualified for the states for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I know they used to have a quasi-competitive team, but I don't think it was ever really established. If you take sideline cheer and competitive cheer, it runs from when sports start in August, and they just ended 2 weeks ago. That's a long season. So what I tried to do with this was break it down and create a sideline season, which is intense, but not as intense as the competitive spirit season. So basically, the sideline season, this covers your football, okay, and a few winter games because it's the same group of girls on our competitive spirit and our sideline cheer teams. So I basically made the full head coach and the top assistant the competitive spirit. That's the bottom half of their part. And then the sideline cheer, I took the number and cut it in half. So basically those 2 coaches going from 1st of August until basically the beginning of February, the end of January, they're basically being compensated for a season and a half, which you look at the time, I think is pretty relative compared to a full-length other season because they don't practice every day because a lot of our girls are involved in other things as well. But looking at the time they put in, that's fair. The only other new position was the added track position. We've combining the head track coaches, boys and girls, into one position, and then having 4 assistants. So when you look at some of these, the increases for some appear much larger, like track, because we added an assistant. And there are some that don't change much at all. Football goes less. Girls basketball only increases. It's $800. Boys basketball. I knew it would cut out on me. I told you. Okay, cross country is a larger change because we just added middle school, and we were splitting the middle school job into 2. But now, if we add the whole program, we have head coach, the assistant at the high school, and then 2 middle school coaches. So that, again, the pot gets increased to $14,750. So you all want the numbers. The overall increase of what I'm proposing is on the last page compared to what we currently do. It's $30,000. That's a good chunk of change. I'll admit that. 30,000. It's on the last page, down there to the right. Yeah. Is it on there? Oh, you don't have that page? I'm sorry.
So, Bill, while you're looking, Bill, where's bocce ball?
I did not add that because right now it's something that is paid from Special Olympics, and we add a little bit, but it's not. We can add that. That's not a problem because I know it's on the one matrix, but it wasn't on the old one, so That's
But-
one that,
But we're not getting rid of a bocce ball team, and we're gonna
no,
have to, we're gonna
nope.
have to.
No,
and we're
no,
gonna
no,
have-
because that's,
and we're gonna have to pay those coaches, correct?
You make a great point. That needs to be, yes, we need to
Yeah.
add that in there as well, because you're exactly right. This is the last year that the funding for the salaries will no longer be through the Special Olympics, and we will need to add that to this. Thank you. Absolutely.
and bocce ball is, I'm with Mary Ellen Brown. I'm sort of not on a crusade, but I'm trying to get Special Olympics Pennsylvania to run that much more like a PIAA sport, just the way they overall do things with scheduling and everything. It's a good thing, but it could be a lot better. But that's, getting people to change their minds. So anyway, so if we would add that, if we would pay them at the full salary, then we would be at what, close to 39?
Does,
Okay.
does that make sense? And I don't know enough about some of these other sports, but like, I know our other heads, like a lot of our sports, they run, while they're not necessarily technically need to be getting paid for it, they're running spring sessions, summer sessions, spring weightlifting for football, things like that. Does a sport like bocce or maybe even cheer, I don't know, do they do the same thing? Like, do they have the same demands on them as a head coach? And I like the idea of the equity, but at the same time, if
I
they're
would
not
say
equitable-
cheer, yes. Bocce, no. They practice a couple days a week when the kids are available. And then this year we only had, because they changed the way we do, we only had 5 matches.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like,
But that could, honestly, that could change. We might have 15 next year, who knows? I mean,
Right.
it literally, that's SOPA, the Special Olympics Pennsylvania, changes that. So we're sort of at their discretion of how many we get. Last year it was 8. We played everyone twice, back and forth. And they shortened the season this year from when you could play. And we were in a division that started before Christmas, and I couldn't get any out-of-league schools. And I even went to everyone local, hey, do you want to come here? We'll come to you. And that's part of the, you have to start by 15 or by 3:30, which makes sense for the identified students and transportation and all that. But yeah, so trying to, again, that's one of those things where the ADs were all saying, we really you need to allow us to run this more like a PIAA sport.
and
So,
and how
I mean,
are we-
okay, so the numbers I used were just based,
Right.
again, this is all,
And what will we do if you decide to do something similar to this about giving pay cuts to current coaches? Because current head coaches are going to get pay cuts.
don't have to,
I mean, if you do it by what you're proposing, wouldn't they be?
no. It's the pool of money, the head coach now can determine how many, he has to have the minimum number on his staff that we have here. So basically, I couldn't have a star coach come in and say, I'll run the whole program. No, you have to have your coaches. This is your pool of money.
I see. So you're determining the pool of money based on
So
the
the head
position.
coach
Okay.
can say, you know what, I want 6 people, but I'm going to make this, so that's really on them. They can keep 4. They can just keep it as it is, and here's how I'm going to divvy the pool up.
So, and then my next question I have, and just throwing it out there, so how do we justify that many number of paid football coaches for the historic number of athletes that are involved in football compared to other sports?
Of the 6,
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
have one,
we
two,
have 6
three,
paid
4,
coaches.
5, 6,
Head
yeah.
coach and 5 assistants. From experience, I know that football, for the most part, is broken down into multiple positions.
Right,
So that would be one of the things. Maybe one of the reasons I never got a head job, and I was on the circuit for quite a while, was the fact that I would have, in the junior high programs, I would have made the heavy move to more junior high, depending on who I had. And I used to bring this, this sounds really egotistical. I could have run it with 2 quality assistants. I could have run a varsity program. And I would have put the rest of my staff at junior high to build them, to get them up. But you will find traditionally 5 is 5 to 6. Bigger schools, bigger coaches because of bigger staffs. But like offensively, you're going to break it down into, you know, you would have your interior line, you would have your wideouts, you would have your running backs, you would have your quarterback. There's 4, and then the head guy overlooks.
Yeah, I
Defense-
totally,
I mean-
yeah.
I mean, that's
I get
why.
it, yeah. I just,
And
Why-
football's,
yeah,
I mean, for lack of a better word, football's been king at how many different schools?
oh, I hear, I know. Yeah, I'm just like thinking now in terms of the track and field, which is out of the norm to have this many, but you're gonna have one coach for 25 athletes.
Correct.
And in football, you have one coach for 4.
Or more, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
6 coaches times 4, how many did we have in the football team last year?
Well,
25?
we started with 42. We did. At the end of the year, we were shooting in 30 because we were playing JV. We were playing JV, and
Okay.
last year was the first we were able to play JV for years because we had enough numbers.
But still, it's still one coach per 7. Like-
Yeah.
Right, I just think that we don't have, we have other sports that are competing for fall, that the numbers just aren't gonna be physically there, maybe, that we don't have as many things competing necessarily in the
And one of the
spring.
other differences, I'll just say from practice perspective, again, this is from having coached multiple sports. In a normal football practice session, at some point you go to team. So if you have 6 coaches, 3 are with the offense, 3 are with the defense, because you're dealing with linebackers, DBs, line, backfield, and that's when you're looking at things and your coordinators doing things. That's where you break that down, because that's where you do a lot of your teaching. That's where you do a lot of those things. Basketball, I mean, you're scrimmaging and one guy can look at offense and defense. Again, that's just from personal experience and knowing how you structure practices and the numbers you need.
So right now, you're saying we're off, the increase would be about $30,000, and on your covering the cost, if you would increase just the charge of admission to $3, you would cover 28,000 of it.
And again, that's based on this year's admissions, which are probably pretty normal. And again, because your home games fluctuate by a couple every year. You're always going to have 5 home football games. JV was added in. We had a few of those. That was 700 and change off the top of my head. Basketball, for the most part, you're always going to have, you have 22 competitions, so you're always going to have 10 or 11 home games. I mean, you try to balance them the whole way through. And again, that's just admissions from football, varsity and JV. Field hockey, I did throw in the JV field hockey play day. That's $5 a head, but across the realm of things, that's not. And then boys and girls soccer. And then basketball, both basketballs and wrestling in the winter. That's what we generate with revenue. That's $2 a head. So yeah, you multiply it by 1.5, and now you double it, or by 2.5. That's where those numbers came from.
And was there any discussion, because I know some schools do this, and we may not have the ability to, of providing any kind of a bonus to a coach whose team moves to a postseason or has athletes that move to the postseason, just because it lengthens their season.
Some places have that, some do not. That's sort of your realm.
Yeah.
Where you got to be careful is you got to define postseason. Some sports it's automatic.
Where?
Wrestling is automatic. You go into sectionals, that's postseason.
I would think districts and above,
Okay, but that's, yeah.
but I don't know.
Some schools do that.
Yeah. And I know some schools may only do it when you go to states. Like
Correct.
they don't do it until, because that adds that extra time into the season.
Where I came
But-
from, it was, we never made districts in football, but it was done by week. And it wasn't a big stipend, but it was just basically a thank you stipend. That's what we called it. We were never thanked because we didn't get there. The one thing about, and again, the cost increase, and this is, when I started this, we went back to try to get people back from COVID and everything, and our crowds increased and the spirit increased, things like that, especially in the fall. The students will tell you they love the fact they can just walk in because it gets more students there. We have a neighboring district changing their admissions policies based on us because of the success we've had. If you talk to our boosters, And I go, the first home football game we did the $2 admission, middle of the third quarter, they had nothing left to sell. And we get, if I had Terry Walk and Cindy Dersham come in here, they could tell you the comments they get from people from other schools, how positive it is that they like the fact we only charge that. And I stress to the girls, I tell them, when people say that, say, please visit our concession stands, because that's the money going back into the programs. And we do have senior citizens in our district. I eat breakfast with one of them every morning, that he always laughs about, oh, I'll come in and pay you too, but it's very common for him to drop a 20 or a 50 over to concession and just to hand it to them. And we also have people that give donations at the gate. Just because people say, you don't charge enough, take this. So, any other questions on that? That's
I have a question. As a parent who has visited lots of other schools this winter for basketball games, why are we the only district that does not charge for middle school basketball games?
I'll put it easy. You want to lose more money?
Lose more money? How will we lose money?
I've now got to pay at least 2 more people to take tickets and all that. So in our contract, that's $121. That's 60 people. And some of our junior high games don't draw that.
Price of game help.
So it's the price of game help
The price of game help is delineated
is
in the
offsets
collective bargaining agreement.
that's a wash.
Well, I mean, they're charging $4 and
I
$5
know.
to get in games, and they typically have it barricaded off that there's one door that you can get in, and they have one person sitting there with a cash box. And I mean,
And that might be a personal thing. I'm never going to put one person in charge of money. Because if anything comes up wrong, I always have 2. I always have 2 when it comes to money. If not 4 at football in both windows. And they each count. They get the bank. It's counted by me. They check it when they get it. And then there's never a question of any irregularities or anything. Maybe that's just my personal preference, but that's how I do it.
Yeah, certainly charging at basketball games in the middle school is something we could look at if that's the desire. I think it's just been looking at it as an opportunity for people to come in and to not necessarily trying to charge due to the overhead of game help, but it's something we can certainly look at, as well as increasing pricing. I think for the last 3 years, we have not increased ticket pricing at all. So like most things, we don't want to go with a big bite off of the apple because, number one, we want to get people in the door, and we want community that necessarily doesn't have kids here to be able to come out and support and be a part of the community too. And I think it was a really welcome opportunity to bring people back in during a time when everything was considered to be virtual or streamed, and now welcoming people back in. I'm okay with a slight increase if it helps offset some of the revenue because their costs are continuing to increase as well for operating sports competitions, such as the cost of referees when we can get them, just the cost of game help, et cetera. So those things come into play. So if anybody's out there and wants to be a PIAA referee, it's needed. And we won't continue to be able to have games, or we'll have to stack games back to back to back if we don't get people who want to be PIAA referees.
Well, just on that terms, we just got a message today. My AD intern went down to Cumberland Valley for the Mid-Penn meeting when I was up here at a meeting, and the baseball center said your JV baseball games, JV softball is going to have 1 umpire in most games. We don't have enough to send 2. And Andrew came back and looked, and 3 of the ones we already have 1 umpire for JV level. That's football. We have avoided it, thank God for homecomings. You will notice in the Mid-Penn we have teams that play on Thursdays, and we're every now and then on a Saturday. That's because there's not enough football officials, and they ask each division to move games so the guy can cover with the 16 crews he has. Basketball this year on Fridays, we never had 3 officials, and that's the standard because that's what we use in districts. They didn't have enough, and there will be. I know the officials, they come in, I'm the one that greets them and talk to them, and we have some officials varsity that halfway through the season are going, I'm 6 days a week. On Saturdays, it's nothing for me to do, 2-3 games. At high school level, I'm not talking elementaries and all that. Where we have officials that run from junior high to varsity or junior high to JV, that they're doing 2 a night, so during a week, and it's a great part-time gig if you have the legs and the stamina. If you ever want to know what varsity officials and JV officials make, come ask me sometime. You'll be amazed.
Well, what do they make? Because I asked a swimming official, and they didn't seem to be making that much. So because does the PIAA subsidize any of that, or is that all on us?
That's on the schools.
Yeah, so I'm like, where does the PIAA money go for everything that they sell and everything that they do for their tickets? I'm just,
It's an excellent question, and,
Yeah.
and a question now.
That's a question that's being brought up to them.
That the question has been asked by others to the point where I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that they are now subject, has been ruled to be subject to right to know. So I think there would be more, not that they're not transparent, but I think there will be some more transparency coming out in terms of that. I can't speak to that, but that's just what I've seen certainly in the news. I think, I can't speak to
Because
where all
like
that-
when I
I mean,
talk,
schools have dues and things like that, but like District 3 pays District 3 schools dues to PIAA,
so what does a basketball official get paid?
$102 for a game.
102.
Varsity, yeah. Junior high gets 84 for 2. JV gets 71, and varsity gets 101 or 102. Football officials are the most. They're about 115, 120 next year. You want the good gig? Do a cross-country starter.
Well, that would be great.
Pool a pistol
Like,
at 70
when the guy told me for swimming it was $100, I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, but like that's 2.5 hours there, plus your drive, plus your uniforms, plus your dues you got to pay. Like I'm sitting there thinking, that doesn't sound so great. Like you know what I'm saying?
Until you do how many meets a week? I mean, it's a part-time job.
Yeah, yeah.
Bill, I had 2 questions real quick. One, you had said in here it eliminates volunteer coaches. Are we saying that there will not be any more volunteer coaches, or it's just going to be fewer? Or are we just saying, no, you cannot have volunteer coaches?
If I was here, if I had that decision,
We are not eliminating volunteers.
Yeah. No.
Volunteers, it certainly will be more apt to be able to, volunteers are great but they're volunteers. And
Right.
you have to be able, there's flexibility. So being able to communicate with the head coach as to when you're available. Maybe I'm a high jump specialist and I can only come once per week. Great. Communicate with the head coaches once per week, and we know that that's the day you're going to be live jumping or working on your skills and form.
Okay.
Yes.
And my other question was, this matrix is built on as if all of our coaches have no coaching experience whatsoever, correct? Because
to start.
on top of this, we've had coaches that have been here for years. They would make more than this matrix says, because there would be additional added on each year.
Yes.
But
I
the
put
net-
in one thing, that'd be $75 per assigned coach. So if you were a basketball program, you get 4.
So how will that affect the net change to our overall salary of coaches, given that the base has changed?
If you're, the football guy gets,
Or if you haven't calculated it,
no, I mean, but like football is $130 for every year for the head coach. So it'd be $170 or 6 times 75 on top of that. So, or not on top of that, but that would be the difference there.
and you know what I mean, though. If we were to look at the budgeted amount based on years of experience of our coaches and based on this change in base salary, do we have an idea of what that will look like?
If we apply current coaches with their years' experience with this new formula, where would that come out, is the question, correct?
And to Leanne's point, I believe I understood correctly, is if the head coach base is less based on their years of salary, then it could be significant. So I would just be curious, and maybe I'm not following that correctly. And I know what you're saying.
Every pool
Let me go
increases.
back. I know what you're saying is what we do is we hire based on the matrix, or if the coach wants to use the matrix differently, they can. And so when Leanne was saying some of the head coaches make less if we hire them based on the matrix, but the head coach has the chance to do whatever they want with this as long as they have a minimum number of staff, correct?
Correct. And that's when the little shaded areas, what the current head coach makes.
Yes.
That's why I put that in there, because most of those are more than that amount. But if you look at the program's pool of money,
Yeah, I understand.
then that would be their choice if they took a decrease.
Do we have, or are you currently working on some type of a written document that standardizes the process for if there is you have a pool of money, however, you can't say, I'm going to coach the whole team with no assistance. I mean, do you have guidelines anywhere that they have to read and maybe sign off on before they elect to have their salaries not based on the matrix? Does that make sense?
What I'm proposing is not a matrix.
It says matrix on my
Well,
paper.
But that, another thing with the coaching. But what the matrix is when you put all these different factors in. This is just literally how you come up with a pool of money. The new one's not a pool of money. Or excuse me, the new one is a pool of money. The old one's not. The old one it's determined by, well, you get this and there's with this points and all the different tiers. What I try to do is just simplify it by saying, here's your pool of money.
Let me just say, you lost me there because it does say base salary from matrix. And if you have all brand new coaches in boys soccer, and then you say, what is the middle school head coach according to the matrix, it says $2,561.
Mm-hmm.
So he's saying, this is
That's the
matrix,
old.
this is matrix. He's
That's the old.
proposing a
Okay,
pool
well,
of
from
money.
the new one, the matrix says it's $3,250, and then the coach
No.
could change that.
No, that coaching slot, it's slotted. That assistant position.
Yeah. So every head
The
coach
pool is
then-
allotted, because of that assistant, the pool is allotted that amount.
So we're doing away with, I didn't understand, we're doing away with the matrix completely, so that anytime you get a new head coach, all the salaries are
Reverts
adjusted.
reverts back to that 4,500, that pool.
Or-
14,750 for all but
But
two sports.
what about an assistant coach that gets a raise every year, and now the head coach is coming in and they're gonna lower that assistant coach's salary considerably because they're gonna take a higher salary based upon the
That's something
pool?
we can look at, but when the head coach leaves, the entire staff is gone. You're starting from scratch.
So if a head coach leaves and comes in and brings
Because
back.
what used to happen
Let me
too-
finish. If a head coach leaves and they come back and they bring back someone who has been an assistant coach for 3 years, that person comes back on the very bottom of the salary scale as if they've had no experience? That doesn't seem right.
They don't have to. That's the head coach's, that's the discussion between that coach and the head coach.
Is that what we do now?
Assistants get nothing. There are no increases for assistants. Because in the old system, I'll use Gary McCoy as an example. He was a junior high football coach making $3,000 more than a varsity head coach. And they said, that's not coaching. So, yeah, and that was one of my things. An assistant coach gets no increase here since this matrix went into effect.
The old matrix.
The old matrix, yeah.
And again, you have to realize
that's the
most
current
of
one.
us-
We don't have any new one yet.
Right. Most of us aren't real familiar with the previous matrix because it
Yeah.
was a secret.
But
Okay.
I think to Mike's point.
That's what it was based on, that first page. Is like,
Okay, thank you.
To your point, though, we do have sports where we have had a head coach leave and the assistants didn't go. I mean, track and field had assistants stay. So how do you, what happens if the new that's the first thing. What happens if the new head coach comes in and says,
with our current system, that guy with the experience has not had an increase, would not get an increase.
no, I'm talking about what if the new head coach comes in and says,
Yeah, I think you're
I'm going to
talking
take,
philosophy. So
Yeah,
technically,
like-
you see that in some of your, football staff. If I come in as a new head coach, I want to bring my staff along with me. You'll see that sometimes in basketball. Yeah, you might still have some longtime assistant coaches who say, regardless of a new head coaching change, I would love to be a part of this new coaching staff. And then at that point, really, it's a conversation between the athletic director, the head coach, and the current assistant to see if philosophies still play in and you still want to be a part of that.
right,
Did I answer?
no, because I'm
Okay.
thinking where I think this gives the flexibility is that the new head coach could come in and say, I want to make my salary more. and I'm going to take money away from you as an assistant because I have the ability to do that, even though that assistant could have dedicated 7 years to our program and have been here that whole time. I feel a little uneasy about that. I mean, now, you're right. Most of the times in football, they're bringing a whole new staff in anyway. But we have, like, you know, when Mr. Knepp retired, Amanda was still here as an assistant. Somebody else could have come in and said, well, I just want to pay you $1,000.
Well, and Leanne, the flip side of that is you have a head coach who may want to bow out because they just feel like they're not giving the best to the kids, but they know if they do, all of his assistants are going to get pay decreases because they will no longer have years of experience. They will go back to zero, which may cause a coach to stay who absolutely probably should be gone.
And then my other question I have is, like, I think also asking, kind of dovetailing on what Mike was asking, is there something or some parameters, some regulations that say you have to have so many coaches per athlete? No. So if you, like, say, for instance, if you had some guy come in at the new head coaching job of the track and field team and says, crap, if I take the whole 100 kids, I could make $20,000 a year.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not going to be reasonable.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. That's
No, but
what I'm
we have
saying.
that-
Where
no,
do we?
But it is written in that proposal, in the budget, that you have to staff, you have a minimum number of staff you must have.
That's what I said. That what I think.
Where is that in writing? And does the coach have to sign off on that or something? Do we have, I would think that would need to be clearly delineated at some point.
And
When I budgeted, because this is what there's a line, it's right there, it says that, and maybe I should have put that one in here, yeah.
So yes, that should be teased out a little bit more in the guidelines and some minimums. And that will help to memorialize because, again, I give you a lot of credit for taking a hard and good look at this and setting this up for a good conversation here and setting this up also so the new athletic director starting, in the summer doesn't have to walk into, hey, by the way, FYI, in 2 weeks, I really want to take a look at a proposal for a new coaching matrix on top of learning and growing and being a part of the community.
Just one other final thing I had. When you mentioned about the increases and you said the increase would be $130, are you pulling that from the old matrix? Or like, how will you, where does it say?
In the current matrix, which we also call the old matrix, based on your tiers, on your years' experience for each year,
But are you going to still use that? So
No.
how did you say what was going to
on
be?
this one,
Okay.
if you look at reasons for change number 5, allow for pay increase for all coaches done by adding 75 per minimum number of coaches to the pool of each program per year. And again, that number
Okay.
can be whatever you would establish it to be.
Okay.
And
I see.
and going back to you talk about some of these head coaches, if a new head coach comes in, and I was still here as the AD, I would say here's your pool of money, but you're right. When at the interview, you're getting $4,500 because that keeps, again, it's that idea of I'm not going to have a coach. Again, this would be me. I'm not going to have a coach come in and say, "Oh, I'll run the whole soccer." No, you won't. No, you won't. And they're the conversations you have to have up front and I'll just say with any coach, hey, who do you want in your staff? How are we going to pay them? How can we do this? How are we going to make it fair? Every time that we have done this so far, like baseball this year, head guy took a pay cut. And again, that might be the individual. When I coached baseball, I took part of mine. Now, granted, my one assistant was my son, so I paid him because he was a volunteer.
So-
and another one. So I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of your head coaches to get the staff they want would be willing to say, you know what, I'll gladly give up, $500 if I can put these boys.
So some really good thoughts and ideas is what I'm hearing, and a good review of what this is. But I think what we can do for you, and for all of us, really, when it comes down to it, is how do we memorialize some of these thoughts into some guidelines that will, because I have a short-term memory, so this will help to memorialize this as we enter into conversations with potential coaches and new programs coming on, or program changes, or as staff is coming and going, and the evolution, that we can take a look certainly as a team and try to memorialize some of these into some bullet points or, a coach's guideline analysis report, if you will. I don't know if that's the right term, but something that's a guideline and a handbook, if you will. So we keep it, we know it, we review it, and it kind of lives on and then it has to be, of course, approved here when you're ready to approve it. Is that?
So in terms of budget, will we be budgeting based on the old matrix because we've already approved a lot of the fall coaches, or how will that work?
In my proposed budget, I went with my new stuff, knowing it would be more. If you reject this, then that number in my proposed budget would revert back. I mean, that's 30 grand less.
But for the football coaches and the fall coaches that we approved already,
We haven't yet.
Oh, I thought we did.
No,
Oh,
our
not football
coaching.
we didn't, that's right.
Yeah,
We
our
just
head
did
football
spring
coach
coaches.
position is open.
Okay.
It closes
That's
on March
right.
7th. So
That's right.
anybody
Okay.
listening who's
So
interested.
basically what happened, what I would foresee there is we don't do this, you go back to the old thing then, and a new coach comes in and says, well, I'd really like to have 8 assistants. Well, then we come back to you like we did with baseball, we did with football. Do you want to waive the matrix and here's the breakdown they gave us? That's what you've done.
Right,
at least
yeah, I
4
was
times.
mistaken. I was thinking that we had already hired for the fall for the next year. Okay.
I just have one more comment. I'm not sure how this is going to be perceived, but are you foreseeing that the sideline cheer coach and the competitive spirit cheer coach would be the same person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to maybe see this look different, i.e., if the sideline cheer coach wants to do competitive cheer, they could get X additional money. Because what this appears is though we're adding an additional sport. And we've had requests to add additional sports, which we've not allowed. And it feels like if we're going to add a competitive spirit cheer, then we weren't going to do golf and we weren't going to do, there was what is it with the boys with the nets? Lacrosse. So I don't like the idea that we're kind of adding an additional sport. I would rather personally see it as though if that head coach decides to do competitive cheer, which I love, frankly, I'm glad they're doing, I think it's wonderful, that they would get an additional salary if they did that.
Well, it sounds like it would be almost the opposite because the sideline cheer is much less.
Well, and that kind of, I'm not sure that I understood that either. You're there cheering for every football game and you're there cheering for some of the basketball games, you're doing all that, but someone comes in and they do, and again, I don't know the nuances, they do, some different coach gets almost double for competitive spirit. Do you understand what I'm saying? It looks like we're adding a sport, and
Can speak to that.
so it's just a thought.
I used to coach cheerleading, so that's why it's almost extending the season. I mean, that's how I see it. It's two separate things, and the competitive, I mean, there's tumbling, it's a whole different, it's more intense. I don't know how many times they. Right.
But I think Mr. Quigley was saying that during sideline cheer, they're not practicing every day, whereas during competitive cheer, it's more like a regular.
Yes.
It's more, right. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that I'm. What,
I was beating this drum 8 years ago to Mr. Quigley that we need more opportunities like this for.
No,
So
I
love seeing it.
I've encouraged kids, I've talked to Ashley, and I think it's amazing that we have ladies who are willing to devote their time to it.
So really, it's a fall and winter season as we extend in.
So, I
because
mean,
it
really, if
extends-
you wanted to make it look like and again, I don't see it as a new one, it's just an extension, then you just simply say, here's sideline / or competitive spirit, and bang, 6,000 is something for the head coach. And
That's more palatable to me, but I may be wrong, but we have denied other people that have wanted to have sports here, so this opens the door to people, well, why don't we have this? Maybe I'm the only one who's thinking that way, but.
No, I understand what you're saying. I really do, and I do think, but I think it is looking at it as and we can look at how we word it. I think it's the extension, as you said, just the length of it, and also when you get into that competitive cheer, the intensity of practices increase greatly. So it is, and I would say the commitment of the athletes and the commitment of the coaches to make sure that preparation and that intensity is there.
think competitive cheer is a PIAA sport, and sideline cheer is not, right? So that's where I think we should define this as the competitive spirit, and then provide a stipend if you are also going to be acting in the role of sideline cheer for the fall. And that way it's one thing, but I think it puts the $4,500 on the same par as all of the other PIAA sports that we're offering, you know.
I'm thrilled to doing it now.
Yeah.
It's only been, what, 2-3 years, and
So I think I'm hearing our next steps in this process is to take a lot of this good information, to really take a look and see how we can devise a document that is simplified, but yet memorializes some of the thoughts that we had today in terms of minimum number of coaches, a head coach, the head coach's responsibilities, and almost, at that point, having some type of document that we can put together. Sounds like good work for the intern as well as we move forward too. He does a great job. That can help us to put together this document that we'll bring back in April. And then if there's, at this point, if there is, after April's caucus, if there is a desire, we do need to approve it. And we'll get it approved, get it ready to go, and we'll begin that process. But just for transparency's sake, moving forward, we will budget with these numbers in here as we move forward until we hear otherwise. That way, we're not going back and making major adjustments. It's easier to adjust it the opposite way than adjust it up, right?
Do we do that with maybe with the proposal saying that it comes with the caveat or whatever that we are going to increase ticket sales by at least $1 to offset the cost?
And I think that's something, as a board, we certainly can do, 100%. 100%. I think that we can go ahead and move forward with that. I think that it's been a while since we've done that. I think $1 increase is certainly palatable. I think that
Technically, you approve our ticket prices every year.
yeah, and we can do that. We could go ahead in our next meeting, not the March meeting, but we can add it to April's agenda and increase ticket prices. And that way it's out there and we can advertise for that.
I was going to ask you, but I think I already asked this before, and I think you gave me an answer, and I know I don't remember it. I know. We don't charge for track meets. Could we? Or is that another one you think you're not going to? I mean, no, I know some of the talk about it was because your throwers wouldn't have, people that watch throwing wouldn't have to pay to get in.
Why not?
Well, why don't we? What was the decision that we never did? I mean, with 110 athletes, we may get more people coming.
But that name will not compete in a meet, I'll tell you that right now.
No, I know.
But
I know.
your amount of loss would be less. We'll put it that way. Track meet's the most expensive thing we put on. So the amount of loss would be less. See if I can find 4 more helpers. Yeah, well, we do TVL and PICO. We charge for those. We don't charge the league and PICO because they're, yeah. PICO, we definitely charge. We charge for all PICO events that we can because that funds the Perry County Athletic Directors Association's scholarships. But just thinking real quick, yeah, I would say 4 additional help. Well, 2 for tickets, and I have to have 1 at the far gate because we'd have to, wristbands, I'd have to have 1. We open the gate by the visitors concession, we open the gate down by the shot put. So people could run in there, I'd have to have people there monitoring the gates. No, I'm just saying, I mean, that's what it would be. And finding 4 right now, I don't have enough to cover all the events right now. If anybody want to come do long jump, triple jump, pole vault, I don't have enough people right now to cover events. We have mats in the budget. There are more cheer mats because we don't have enough to put a thing, and they're already doing. She's planning a cheer camp for this summer and all that. But yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Quigley. We have some additional work to do, and we look forward to that work, and thank you for all of your work thus far in this important process. To clarify and to simplify a very complex historic document. Speaking of documents, we're going to go ahead and look at our draft board meeting schedule. I'm not going to go through each of these, but staying current, you'll see that each month there are 3 meetings to stay historic with that. The first meeting has been our policy work that we continue to do. Policy committee is open to the public. We invite participation in policy. Policy is exactly what it is. It takes a look at our current policies, what needs to be cut, what needs to be created, and what needs to be kept, and what needs to be updated. It's significant work and important work, and one of the most important work that we do as a collective group and a team. And then we have our caucus meeting, which is really a work session like we have today. It's a non-voting meeting for the most part, but it allows us the opportunity to take a look at important items, and it takes a look to ask open questions to feel comfortable whether an item or not should appear on an agenda to be voted on. It gives us that really, this is to be open and a discussion and allow you to direct me as to what items need to be on, removed, or you have more questions on. I think it's worked pretty good thus far and allows for a committee of the whole. The only month that you will see that does not have policy and does not have caucus is December for our reorganization. July is on here, but that certainly has been a month where historically business has been a little slower, so you certainly have the right to say, I think we're okay, or we've got a lot of important things we need to talk about. Let's go ahead and continue to have that. So I'm going to give you the time later to take a look at that, and if you see any questions on it, so please let me know. And if you're in agreement, we will keep that on the agenda for next Tuesday.
I just have a quick question about reorganization.
Yeah.
Why do I recall something about we always had it on a Monday?
So by policy and by school code, it has to be the first Monday. It's by school code, how it falls, and it has to be on the first Monday of the month. Yes, so that's why it's always on that Monday.
But don't you have it as a Tuesday?
I do, so it'll be changed. Good catch. Thank you. Good job.
Hey, no problem. That's why I'm here. Okay.
Quick note of that before I forget. All right, while I'm making a note for myself so I don't forget, the next item is our device refresh review. And we're going to give you a chance to kind of take a look at this, because this is exactly, I believe, the information that you asked for. And I want to give a tremendous amount of credit to Mr. Holmes, to Ms. Snyder, and to especially Mrs. Matosh for the amount of time that we spent taking a look at everything. Researching, discussing, planning, pros, cons, good, bad, indifferent, what this looks like, and making sure that you had the information. At last board meeting, you had asked for a 3-year cost for iPads, a 3-year cost for Chromebooks, a 4-year cost for iPads, a 4-year cost for Chromebooks, a cost breakdown for total cost of ownership of an iPad, a total cost of ownership of a Chromebook, and a total cost of ownership of a Chromebook that represents certain features that replicate to the best of the ability that of an iPad. And that's exactly the report or analysis that you will see here. Certainly on page 3 is the 3-year iPad. Page 5 is the 4-year iPad cost with a graphic to show what that looks like in terms of years. Page 8 is the total cost of ownership. You'll see the net total cost of ownership on the bottom columns, as well as some information pertaining to associated costs. I will let you take a look at that, and then we will certainly be able to entertain any questions, as I send myself an email so I don't forget something. So an interactive panel would be very much like those panels you walk up to and you have the ability to touch or to drag. We moved away from interactive panels because they've been failing, and we utilize smart televisions and Apple TVs to push work up. But going back with a Chromebook, we would have to have some type of interactive without being tethered to it, and that's...
The Chromebook doesn't work with Apple TV?
No, it does not. I don't believe. No.
When you had sent us the original price for the iPad, it's markedly lower. Why is that, or what happened, or?
I didn't hear your question, I'm sorry.
So when you had sent us back the 16th of February, you had given us the price on, because we had asked you for that, remember? And the total price was $445.44, and now it's at $373. Like, how did it jump? How did it go down that $70?
Yeah, it was the discount that we received. The discount in the iPad, which is the discount also in the 3-year protection.
So that they give us that different than what their actual Apple pricing is, their education pricing?
Yes, so they have been discounting this iPad currently. I think originally when he quoted us, he gave us the discount in the 3-year protection. We saw it in the 3-year protection instead of the iPad, and now it's in the actual iPad quote.
So we're not doing the 4-year Apple Care?
Well, we were comparing Chromebook 3-year and Apple, like we're trying to keep it comparing the same.
There is no 4-year Chromebook Care, so we tried to compare oranges to oranges.
Okay, right, I get that. So I guess all right, so right now we're just comparing the two of them, but then our cost of the iPad is not necessarily going to be this, should we go with the iPad?
Well, we could go with the 3-year Apple Care because in year 4, we're moving them to the elementary school, and they will not be taking them home except for special projects. So the repair cost will go down considerably
Yes.
Okay,
And we've seen less breakage this year.
from the elementary.
Correct.
and when you had given us the numbers before, you didn't include, so you're saying the buyback, is that the money they're giving us for the iPads we're selling back?
They said after 6 years that we could potentially get $40 back per iPad.
Okay,
So after that 6-year cycle.
okay. Would we get anything back on Chromebooks if we were to sell them back?
No, and actually what we're hearing is we would be charged $10 per device to recycle them.
Okay.
For generation 11?
Yeah, generation 11.
That makes sense?
It does make sense what you're saying, absolutely. Again, we're waiting. On 11, just like everybody, I think, is waiting on when they're announcing or dropping, if that's the right word to use. Try to be hip with that word, right? When they release the new 11, we're not sure when that's coming. We know it'll be sometime.
If we get something that is less than the 11, we will not be able to use it for 6 years. It will have run out of support before 6 years.
No, we'll still be able to use it for 6 years, but we potentially may have a 10th generation for 7. Potentially, that could happen. Is potentially.
This is based on current pricing right now, and there's no pricing for the 11 because there's no timeline that we were told whether the 11 came out. We saw the other day, right? There's pre-order for some new MacBooks. I haven't really seen what the pricing looks like on those, nor am I really, is it relative to this conversation? But certainly, we're waiting to see what the 11's pricing could be, or what features are even on the 11. Is it comparable to what we're currently seeing? We're not sure.
So are we saying the difference between a 3-year and a 4-year cycle is $10,000? Am I reading that correctly? A year?
10,000 a year, correct. A year.
Explain that to me, please.
Well,
Yeah.
for an iPad, is that what you're speaking about? The iPad 3-year cycle is 160.
3-year versus the 4-year. It doesn't appear like it's that much of a cost difference. Am I wrong?
No, not really, because you're just extending it over an additional year. So the total cost just over an additional year. So it's not a significant savings.
I'm jumping way ahead, if we decide that Chromebooks and iPads are pretty close in cost, so we decide we're going to stay with the iPad, I'm still looking for a cost savings. I would like us to, number one, wait until the 11th gen comes out. That gives us the most length of time that we can keep it, that we could be better guaranteed for it to stay in the correct operating system. I would like us to see us refresh 7 through 12, move current 7 through 12, 1 through 6. I would look at or suggest maybe looking at not being 1-to-1 in kindergarten, keeping 1 through 6 for the next 4 years, and then refresh again in 4 years. That way you would have one 11th generation in your upper grades, and you would be in your 8th generation in your lower grades, and there would be only 2 generations of iPads. And I think that might give us more cost savings. Because we would refresh once every 4 years. So I know that's a lot to take in, because you're probably like, wait, let me write this down, because it's almost like Jenga. So if you
Walk me through this.
If you sold 7 through 12 back and got them all brand new generation 11s when they come out.
Okay.
Sorry, no, yes, sell them back, get new generation 11.
Okay.
Keep the Gen 8s in the lower grades
So keeping current devices in lower
for
grades.
the next 4 years, like you were
K
thinking of doing
to
anyway.
6.
Well, we were going to do 3 years, right? It was going to be.
Right, I'm just suggesting the 4-year cycle. And then in 4 years, when you refresh again, you move those 11th gen down to the elementary school, and you get whatever gen is out in 4 years for 7 through 12.
So the only thing is, I think with that, it would be, right, 7 years for the current 1st through 6th grade. Not.
Yes,
So there's that potential again of having.
you're right, but I mean, it's better than, we're already talking that we're gonna be, the possibility of buying 10th gen now, and they're already 3 years into the iOS cycle. I mean, I'm just wondering if that provides us better cost savings on a 4-year cycle than what we're seeing of only $10,000. And it gets rid of all these different generations of iPads in here at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at what that would look like.
Well, it wouldn't be K. K would not be 1-to-1. It would be 1 through 6, 7 through 12.
But no, there are more students in first through
Yeah, I
sixth
mean-
grade than 7 through 12.
And that could fluctuate, right? I mean,
Traditionally, it is
Yeah.
more in first through
Yeah.
6.
Summary comparison chart that gives the total for the, let's say, 3-year cycle iPad, 165,200. What does that purchase?
how many iPads are you asking?
How many iPads, yes?
Yeah. How'd you come up to that number?
It was 1,200 iPads, 1,200 cases, and Apple Care for 3 years for 1,200.
1,200 iPads would be which grade? The brand new iPads for grades 5 through 12.
So you wouldn't be, so under my plan, you wouldn't be buying 5 and 6 right now. You'd only buying 7 through 12.
And what would it cost us the next year?
The same cost. It's for that 3 year, right, 3 years, we would be locked into that price for 3 years.
165.2, 165.2, 165.2 for 3 years.
Correct. And then we would do that again, and then we would renegotiate again, so it would be every 3 years.
Correct. Correct.
So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then those after 3 years would go to, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that gives us 2 years. 2 other years. What would we do with those items?
So we could so there might be potentially more, but traditionally our K to 4 has a larger population. And honestly, if I would want to keep some back for repairs, because I wouldn't want to repair a 4-year-old, 5-year-old device, spend $300 when they're only worth $150. So I
Right,
would
right, but
want
you're
to
not-
keep some, but we could potentially sell some too, I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, and your numbers right now, that 165.2, as I'm looking, is not including the cost of the BiPAC. That's including the straight-out cost of the
Right.
iPad.
Yeah.
So you'd still have that
Yeah.
anyway.
And this seems like a lot less than what we've normally, normally we're looking at $300 and some $1,000.
Our last lease was a little over 200,000.
Well, remember, it was a K to 12 refresh. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep.
So it was the entire school district.
And we were
of
refreshing
800 or
every like 2
1,800.
years.
That's correct. And the idea behind that certainly was to utilize the buyback when there's a higher potential, right? And put that buyback back into the lease payments. And then really, almost a buyback would take care of 1 year's lease payment almost. if
But keep
that's
in mind,
accurate.
we only did that one time. We did one lease.
Multiple times, at least 2 times that the 8 to 12, 7 to 12 we did with the,
No, the lease, when we were doing the lease, because we weren't leasing back 7 through 12 back then, were we?
Yes.
Pre-COVID, we were still
Yep,
leasing?
we did
Okay.
the exact same thing since the beginning of
Oh, okay.
iPad 1-to-1.
And really leases, we just,
It was rent to own.
yeah, we're making payments on the devices.
What is the recommendation of the admin?
The recommendation is the 3-year device refresh cycle, based on the numbers that we see. But I'm not opposed, and we're not opposed to seeing what the 11 looks like, the cost-wise. It could come in higher, it could come in lower. We are not sure what it is at this time.
But I also would really like to see
That's
the
a
idea
really-
of
that was a
waiting on
really
the 11
profound
and
statement,
keeping
wasn't
them
it?
4, right?
I'm sorry?
I would like to wait on the 11 and then go 4, because then we're getting the most recent generation, allowing us to build that 4, and it may be able to absorb whatever the increase is. I mean, some of the Apple chatter is that it's not going to increase much in cost.
What would be the drawback, Christine, if we waited for the 11? Which would mean we'd have to wait another year before we refreshed.
Well, not necessarily. We don't know. Honestly, it could, tomorrow, they could come out with an 11 because they came out with MacBook Airs. They're not having a special event to announce them. It could be next month. It could be in September as well. The drawback would be that we would have the 8s longer, but if we go with a 4-year plan, it's actually an 8-year plan, and we're going to have the 11s for 8 years instead of the 6 recommended. So that would be a drawback of that as well. So
I just, yeah, I mean.
no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
I think my biggest concern would be that if we go 10s now with already 3 years into the iOS would be
I agree.
a very risky move.
Yep.
And there was no new generation last year. So they are overdue for a next gen iPad.
Right.
It's more likely that it'll happen this year than not.
Yeah, interesting the way that they're.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the cost of the what are we talking about? Chromebooks. You do have the technician cost in there. I know Mike had said about asking about that. Is that something that are you saying absolutely has to happen if we would go to Chromebook?
Well, what we were seeing, and Mrs. Matash did a great job of reaching out to some schools larger and our similar size that deploy Chromebooks. They've seen significant breakage that requires. So for the first couple of years, no, because it's total pro care that we would be sending the devices back. But it's after that 3 years that we would need somebody to really be dedicated to a massive amount of repairs that we've seen from the analytics set on the feedback we received from other districts.
And we didn't include the cost of the resources to do the repairs. So not only the technician, but the screens, the keyboards, all of that, the hardware that we would need to purchase because it wouldn't be included in it.
Sorry, do they have a similar thing to
Yeah, so
Apple
the first
Care?
3 years, we wouldn't
Okay.
need that.
Okay.
But after that 3rd year.
So the difference between a iPad and a Chromebook, I would definitely, if we went with Chromebooks, want one with a keyboard, because I think that is a significant importance, would be like, what, $20,000 or $30,000, depending. We would save $30,000 worth to a 4-year return. So, and we would switch everything from Apple, which everyone's comfortable with, to Chromebook. So we're talking about $20,000, but our kids are still not using keyboards, which is a problem, but, okay. Which in the grand scheme of things, we have to decide if that's a whole lot of money or not.
Christine, I'm curious with some of the districts that you talk to, because I know in here you mentioned that like Chromebook does not have accessibility for some of the speech communication applications, which we do have access right now, and I know we have used in the past for some of our individuals to like LAMP, Pro Loco to Go. So did those districts, and did you happen to ask, did those individuals then have to have 2 devices to
They
then
buy
be able to
iPads for them.
they have iPads and a Chromebook then, so then we have to have 2 devices
Yeah.
for one student. Okay, thank you.
And have we had any movement on whether or not, if we go with Apple, that we could not have to buy 2 devices for the teachers? I guess the iPad Pro is the same expense as if we had, the iPad and the Mac, I guess, for the teachers.
Yeah, we are still watching that price of that device and seeing if that price of that device drops, and as well as the comfort to being able to use it if it's manageable to be able to. So to answer your question, an iPad Pro at this point, cost-wise, it's not effective.
And we might want to survey our teachers to ask them if we're refreshing these, if they need both devices, because I understand there are some teachers that choose not to use them both. If they need them, we get them. If they choose not to, then we save a buck.
Sure, absolutely.
Am I understanding that correctly? So for the 3-year refresh, you're saying we would not need a technician because it had the 3-year plan? We would only need that for a
Right.
Chromebook after year 4?
So,
Yeah.
so
So that isn't correct there, those numbers?
No, because we're going to be moving down.
Oh, so we would need, okay, I
yeah,
gotcha.
it is in both. For any Chromebook at year 4, we would need it, not for the iPad.
I got it.
Yeah.
So not the first 3 years, we wouldn't probably need that technician, it would be the 4th year.
Okay.
Chromebook pricing that you did then was from K through 12? Like, was that for everybody? Like,
1,200, we did
We did
1,200,
1,200,
just
but-
so we were comparing the same number of devices.
but if we were going to keep iPads in the elementary school, like, if we were going to go with that sort of style that I'm hearing more and more is being utilized in schools of Chromebooks, upper grades, iPads, lower grades. It is. I mean, Susquenita, East Penn, Cumberland Valley, like I've talked to a number of people that have, and that this is the way it is. Whether we agree with it or not, doesn't matter. But if we were to do that, because we sort of bought into that, we would be refreshing Chromebook, but then we don't have the ones to drop down. We have
Right.
nothing to
So
drop
we-
down into the elementary school, correct?
Right, I do think it would be a different, we did not do that
Right.
summary, and it would probably actually be a little bit more, right? Because we're gonna be having to buy the iPads and the Chromebooks.
Yeah, you would have to, right, you could probably
I
offset it
don't
a
know
little bit,
how
but yeah,
much,
but
because
yes.
we did
There
not
certainly is
look at
volume
that.
pricing,
Because you're not gonna be,
especially
you're not
for
gonna
the
be able to,
Chromebook.
well, not just the volume, but
Trickle
I'm like,
down.
you wouldn't be recycling them down.
Right,
Because they would be in different devices.
Well, and I think something functionality and talking with a teacher from East Pennsboro who's a chemistry teacher, they do have Chromebooks, and she has students in the Susquenita school district. She said her preference is that she would much rather have in their district iPads, because as a chemistry teacher, she said all they can do is type. They do not have the capability when it comes to doing formulas or writing. They don't have the capability of free writing like we do on an iPad, and she said she would much rather have that for her students versus only being able to type in a text box, which is all they have capability of doing
But I think.
in their Chromebook.
I think some of the, like, my son has a Chromebook for college, and he's got the one that's 2-in-1 touchscreen, so he's able to write on the screen too. So they do have those that they make them available with that capability to be able to do both. And maybe the ones at East Penn, they didn't do that 2-in-1, yeah.
Yeah, I do think most of the districts that have Chromebooks are the 3110s that have a Dell. They have not the 2-in-1, just the.
So I think what I'm hearing right now is wait and see what the 11 comes out, wait and see what pricing is, and just wait a little bit at this point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and maybe just, I don't think it would take that much to make the comparison to the concept of the 4-year, where you would refresh your 4-year now on the 10s, just to see how that might change your costs over 3 years, and and just rotate down to 1 through 6. I mean, if you don't want to do that now, it's not a big deal, if we're waiting on the 11s anyway, but I think it
mean, we
might
can-
help more budgetarily if we're looking for the budget.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that.
So what happens if the 11 drops in July? We've already approved our budget. That does not have $165,200 in it. Do we then just take a special vote to approve the purchase of the 11s? We purchase them and then take that money out of our fund balance? Is that the thought?
We certainly can, or we have a conversation about when is the appropriate timing. Is the appropriate timing to go another year and wait? Or is the appropriate timing to purchase?
But if it's not in our budget, which is approved in June,
I would recommend that it stays in the budget. That line item stays in the budget. Whether or not we use it or not, it stays in the budget. If we don't use it, it gets moved over. And it gets moved over to our capital reserve specifically for devices.
or it offsets projected deficit?
Well, apples and apples.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
No,
Thank you.
it's a bad analogy. Again, I think, I just want to point out, I want to thank the entire team for the amount of effort that went into this analysis, because I think it is a well-developed study. And I think it's a good study that we have now as a good template moving forward to add and adjust things as we continue. could certainly be a good case study, longitudinal study moving forward for others and other things as well. So speaking of studies, if it's okay, I'd like to move into debt discussion. Or do we want to take a 2-minute recess? Hearing no need for a 2-minute recess, let's go ahead and move into next steps in discussion. I'm going to pass out some handouts. Yes, sir. I understand.
We take one and pass it down?
Yes, please. And same with this document as well. And if you could pass these over on this side as well, too. So you're going to see a couple of documents I'm passing around. The one is just a copy of the presentation so you get to see, because I think it's important that you see a little bit on the next slide, which is the debt service. And this is just, again, a picture. This is a snapshot in a moment in time with some assumptions. The assumption is interest rate and a projection of what it would be to keep debt service consistent with option 2, 3, 4, and 5, which again is looking at the borrowing capacities from 1.4 million up to 15 million of borrowing capacity. The idea of keeping debt service in play is an important financial strategy for us as a school and us as a district and as a board to ensure that capital projects can be, and larger projects can be taken care of by keeping that debt service in play. Removing that debt service will require a tremendous amount of millage increase and a tremendous amount of planning if we can ever get that amount back in once it's removed. And again, that's why I have that printed for you to see, because it's difficult and we want you to reflect certainly on this information. As you'll see, option 1 will just take care of our obligation to Cumberland Perry Area Career and Tech Center. Now again, this is for illustrative purposes only, because we will not know current interest rates until we went out and got bank proposals. Seeing if there's any questions on that before I move on.
Just refresh my memory on this, because I think I asked this when Raymond James was here, and I forget the answer, to be honest with you. I thought, when I looked back at a budget from a couple years ago, our debt service was 2.25. And we have it at 2.366. I do recall there being a $150,000 thing there, but do you remember me talking about that? And so, listen, I'm trying to find hundreds of thousands of dollars anywhere I can find them. Like,
Sure. Oops.
I think in that year you're referring to, there was an offset of interest that came back from the state that lowered it to that amount. That was the net amount.
I thought there were a couple of years in a row we had this 2.25. Because I remember asking. Based on where we were with our.
Yeah, certainly for illustrative purposes, this is the graphic, but we would take a look at that historical number, where there would be 2.25 or 2.36. Whatever that historical number would be, we would ask when we go out for bank proposals to keep that number in place. And that may take a look at that last year of 2033, or that last year of 2032, or that last year of 2030, depending on the borrowing. What that would look like, it may adjust that last year a little bit. So this is what we certainly need at this point is we've been certainly talking a lot about debt service for several months, and it is certainly a big decision. But certainly, I think at this point, it is imperative that we come to some type of consensus, because bank loans will take about 60 to 75 days to process. And that is dependent upon if you even like any of the interest rates that come back. That's number one, because you can reject them outright. Number two, by taking funds, we have the ability to arbitrage those funds, because it is still at a very interesting time in our economy, right? While interest rates are significantly a little bit higher, so is the ability right now to invest those funds, where it's actually a little bit higher to invest the funds than what interest rates are. That might not historically be there moving forward. What we will ask, and again, we're not sure if we will get, but it will be determined if we accept, will be to be able to provide for a no penalty payback option at any time. And that's important. And again, if we go out for a proposal, it doesn't mean you have to accept any of them. What we would be responsible for would be some of the cost and fees of advertising, and some of the cost and fees associated with that work at that point.
Okay, so option one is $1.4 million. Is that right?
That's right.
And that will all go toward Cumberland Perry Vocational Technical School. So option two is $4 million. Option three is $10 million. Could you walk us through the plan, preferably year by year? I know that's a lot. What would happen if we did option two with $4 million? 1,400 or 1,400,000 of it would go to the tech school. I see here we got 4 million, 10 million, but how much will all 4 million be spent in 1 year? Like what are we looking at there?
No, it's a 3-year drawdown, I believe, to be able to expend the funds. We would not. Remember, there's a lot of miscellaneous. This is just for illustrative purposes. You'll notice there's asterisks and carets next to a lot of the information I provided to you. The asterisks are, some of these are not even real-time quotes until we go out and procure actual quotes based upon RFPs, based upon being able to get vendors in to be able to give us that information. Because right now, a lot of it is estimates based on information that we have. So yeah, some of it will be able to be taken care of in a year. Some of them may not be. Some of that is the assumption that the availability of providers to be able to get. And again, these are just some illustrative recommendations of spending. You may say, hey, all this is great. You know, you're talking a lot about the middle school and you're talking a lot about the high school. Maybe the collective will is not to spend any of that and to start the preparations for a new building. So all of those are significantly on the table.
They said when they were here we had to spend 33% within a certain period of time. How does that work if we choose to just put it aside for a future building?
Say that question again.
The
please.
question was, we have to spend 33% of it by X amount of time. And if we wanted to take some of the funds and set it aside in capital for a future building project, that would not be applicable for the loan.
And we would have to use it in 3 years.
33% in 3 years?
No, we would have to earmark and start the projects within 3 years that we were using the money for.
We can't borrow $12 million and put it aside for a new building, which we're going to build in 10 years. Right?
Correct.
Correct.
That's a good question.
And if you're considering a new building, is the new building going to be middle school?
We have not got into a conceptual design We have not engaged with any architects.
No, I understand. That's not what I'm at. Because when you're saying about, do we decide to forego all of these repairs in lieu of doing, or in light of the fact that we might be doing a new school? Well, if the new school we're looking at doing is the elementary school, then we're still going to need to do the middle school repairs. So that would weigh on my decision. But if you're envisioning that if we're foregoing repairs, that it's because the middle school is the target school, then that plays into my decision. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. If you were to ask me right now this second, again, there's a lot of work that would go into that, right? Visioning, exercises, a total, again, review of it. But I would say a high school, middle school combination, where the school would be one school, but separate entities, being able to share common HVACs.
But the middle school building would be the building that would be vacated, is what I'm asking.
And the high
Because
school.
A lot of these,
Both buildings would be vacated. That's correct.
So how realistic is it to, like, when Crabtree and Rohrbach were here and we did an analysis, they were recommending we build a new elementary school. And then what I'm hearing you have said just in the last couple of months is the possibility of doing a new middle school, high school. Like, what's the basis of that? What makes us think that we're going to need to build any new school in the next 10 years or 20 years or whatever? Because I think that vision, that plan, especially if we're looking at a possible solar array and looking at our property and everything, like that I need a better understanding of that projection before we make some of these decisions, unfortunately.
No, you asked a great question that I'm going to get to that, but a great point. I think when we looked at the elementary, and Crabtree came and took a deep dive at the elementary, it was rooted in a couple of things. The first thing it was rooted in was, remember, the big concern was not having light in some of the classrooms.
Right.
That was a total reconstruction of that to a very cost high element to do that. Number two was we said there's no congregate place to be able to hold the school for large assemblies. So we said, let's put in a gym. Well, to do a gym that size would bump it out. So it was built off to the left-hand side. That cost went up. Then we talked about where this breaking in, putting in the dedication of teams that were a little bit more connected without having to go up and down the stairs because one team didn't fit in. Well, that's going to always change based upon class size and need. So that was bumped a little bit, and the stairwells were then brought in. So as they begin to augment and change, really what's rooted in my conversation right now about a middle school, high school, is the HVAC systems as well as the current age of the buildings. There's a life expectancy of everything. And there's a life expectancy of some of these buildings and looking at that. I'm not saying elementary won't need some TLC, flooring, certain other aspects to it, but it certainly has that potential.
if we were dreaming of doing that, is there anything, and the thought process or the timeline was just on a rounded numbers 10 years, is there anything that's on this list of potential capital improvements that we would have to do regardless of whether we're building in 10, like that aren't going to make it 10 years?
Yeah, a couple of
That are
things.
definite needs.
I mean, we've really admired the bleacher issue. And that's been something. Are we willing to wait 10 years to
I would agree.
modify bleachers?
Right.
Number one. I think we continue to look at, roofs can't wait 10 years. They need to be treated. So roof treatment is important because we can't have significant leaks in the roofs. But what we would do is minimize from a 20-year product to a lower product to a 12-year. So those decisions would impact the cost based upon what we would want to do and how we would do it. So we wouldn't put a 25-year roof treatment onto a roof that we only are really hoping for 10 to 12 years. So that would change our look. But if our thought process is to continue with that building, we would look, especially in some very difficult areas and high traffic or high impact areas, to look at a higher quality year product.
So it sounds to me like we have a significant amount of work to do and probably hiring outside people, whatever, to come in and decide whether we should be doing a building and getting a whole huge plan together as to when that is so we can make some of those decisions. And perhaps even needing to do that before we make a solar array decision because of space and land. And so and just basically saying that, I'm just thinking option 2 gives us, a number of years to get our act together to decide what we need to be doing before we maybe borrow a larger amount so that we could invest in taking care of buildings that we know we're not going to be tearing down. Like, it's just my thought. Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, so you certainly asked for my recommendation last month, and thank you. My thought would be to borrow the $15 million, and here's why. If we can ensure a prepayment without penalty at any time, and if after we take some of that in arbitrage, which is completely legal to do so, and potentially make $30,000 to $60,000 on arbitraging that funds, we could take that fund and then repay and prepay back on that loan, right? Without any penalty if we write it in such a way. And then we can use that funds that we arbitrage to do exactly what you just said, which I love, which is looking at hiring an independent engineering firm to come onto campus and to work for us to look at, we've talked about solar arrays, but are we going to put a solar array in the same spot we want to put a new building in 10 years? Absolutely not. Having somebody come to look at our site and say, here's option 1, 2, and 3. If you're looking in 10 years or plus for a new building, here's where it could be. Because I can only visualize, and I've got wild and random ideas, and they're great, but I'm not an engineer. They'll be able to take a look at the square footage and say, here's where it could go. Then we would decide, do we like that spot, and preserve it. Then they would say, and we would ask them to look at a geotechnical shading and optimal location study for solar arrays. Is there a spot left? Maybe there isn't. Maybe there is. What would that look like? And then having that same company who could do those things for us to look at what would it be to design a solar array for us based on what we can maximize. And also work with us on the interconnection application to PP&L. Because we made a lot of assumptions with solar, but we don't have the gritty details that we need.
So we would only have to spend like, what, $4,700,000 within the first 3 years, like 30% of it or whatever, or else we could just do the whole arbitrage thing. Is that right? Right.
Yes, I'm not aware of that 30%. It's 3 years you have to spend the money.
All of it?
Yes, if we were to take the 15 million, we would want to have projects under construction or underway for that money. Otherwise, you would pay it back.
But the plan is not, what I understood, correct me if I'm wrong, was not to spend 15 million in 3 years. Or it was to, what I heard in my simple mind was we would just put a lot of that money in the bank and earn interest on it and then just pay off the loan.
That's a possibility. The possibility is, what do you and we envision we want to do? So the big decisions have to be made of, do we want to continue to plan for a new building? And if we do, it's still some planning process that needs to occur, right? What is the anticipated construction cost of something like that so we can begin those conversations to plan for? Or no, which means then we have some things, areas within that we need to take care of. I know it's a lot.
I like the idea of borrowing the money to make and tackle some of these projects that we need to do. I'm not loving the idea of engaging engineers to, again, I mean, I like the idea of engaging an engineer to figure out whether, what a school might look like if we're looking at deciding, do we do these projects now or do we go to a school? Because if it doesn't seem like it's worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, isn't that your line? That we don't do it. I'm not in favor of spending money for engineers to come in and start exploring solar array. That's just where I stand on it. I just don't want to spend more money on that. I mean, I feel like there is part of me that feels like it was a kind of a big waste of time, although not a big waste of money, to listen to Crabtree and Herbaugh come in for 6 weeks to listen to what they gave us, and we're really not looking at even tackling all the stuff that they wanted us to do. Some of it we are. I mean, I know.
Oh,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
100% we are. I think where there was multiple weeks, so we got an enrollment study, and we saw our enrollment.
And
That
that
was
was-
good. The second part, they did some redesigns of some certain buildings with certain boxes they built out at the high school and middle school and elementary, and showing what that would look like and giving some construction estimates. But I really think one of the key pieces that we walked away with was the mechanical engineering and plumbing report. We were able to take that and also look at our capital improvements plan and use some of that information that was good, because it looked at some of the life expectancy of some of the usefulness and the lifespan of certain products.
So are the things that brought to light, are we taking care of that with this money we're borrowing?
Some of those, yes.
Should we be taking care of all of them? The ones that we know have to be done and not, and using the money. I'm not sure that I'm loving the idea of borrowing $15 million, because I think once we have $15 million there, then it's like, oh, we have the $8 million for a solar array. Let's just go do it. Like, I would really want to be very purposeful as to what we're borrowing that money for, with the idea of maybe arbitraging.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And
Some of it.
I put that in there, because it's one of the few capital improvements that there's a possibility of getting a refund of some sort, right? What was it, 35%? And it's a possibility of offsetting, even if it's a little bit and not 100%, but some of our electricity costs that we know we're preparing this year's budget, 24-25, for an increase in electricity costs because our electricity rates are going to increase. So that was brought in there just to be able to think about how we can kind of future-proof some of those ongoing costs that are ongoing. But certainly, this is all illustrative purposes, 100%. I think I was tasked with coming to show some of those and trying to get a wide range. And again, this is certainly, you can kind of laugh at it if you will and say it's a wish list, but I think it's really based upon the capital improvement plan. It is based upon the MEP plan that we received. It is based upon our own needs and feedback, as well as some feedback that we received.
On the back page of that wish list, on the,
Yeah.
so that says middle school HVAC replacement or recommission, $3 million.
Yeah.
It says, or geothermal middle school HVAC, and it
Yep.
says, is that 9,000 or is that 9 million?
Oh, sorry, that's 9 million.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry about that. And that is eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act.
but again, we wouldn't do that if we're gonna be looking at building a middle school.
That is correct. Nor would we recommission the HVAC. We would try to maintain it.
And what would it cost to maintain it? I guess what I'm wondering is there another number that would get us to the 10 years that we
The
would have to
difficulty in
address?
saying what would our cost of maintaining it be?
You're just talking annual maintenance.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And we
okay.
we
But
run
nothing
into-
that you know that needs to be refurbished right now in order to have it go?
We don't.
Okay.
It is, we do know that we have a multi-stack, which is another piece of equipment within our chiller system that has been out of commission since 1992. It is not been used because it wasn't plumbed properly, installed properly, and every time the hot water comes in, it bogs down the system and shuts it down. To redo it is approximately anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 to refix it, to put another pump in it, and to get it functioning properly. It could help with some lead lag, taking some of the energy cost and running during certain days. The problem comes into play of it's a 1992 piece of equipment, so we're gaining more information. Is it worth doing? Number two, is there an energy return on doing that? So a lot of these questions, we're waiting on answers from that we continue to ask as well.
The option 5, we're taking advantage of a relatively low interest rate, because if we do an option 3 or an option 2, and in a couple years decide, okay, we're going to borrow again, we don't know what the interest rate might be. Is that the reason behind borrowing more now, even though we don't know what we're going to spend it on versus borrowing less?
So really, I think the thought process, or at least my thought process, or our thought process, is borrowing more now with the opportunity to invest it at a higher interest rate. You're exactly right, and taking advantage of that higher interest rate to invest. With the idea, if the banks out there will allow us to, when we write in the RFP, to have prepayment at any time. So meaning that if we collectively do not want to do A, B, C, D, E, and F, and we end up only utilizing 8 million of that, we can take that other 7 million and return it on the debt.
So we're not going to be like, we got to spend $50 million in 3 years. We're going to be like, we're going to keep this money here because it's making more money for us than we're paying in interest, and then we're going to pay off the loan. Is that, and I guess Chester would be keeping an eye on all that.
Yes, so in November, if we were to, I did a schedule where we had money coming out of that 15 million for different projects. But as of November, we would make about $13,000 a month in interest arbitrage on that money. The total cost of our securing that money is about $40,000 in fees. So that $13,000 a month would allow us to get back those fees, and it would also allow us to have some additional money to use where we would want to use that money. But in no way would you have to say we need to spend that $15 million. That would be completely at the board's discretion. It's the cost of the fees to borrow the money.
They're baked into that. Yeah.
And then we vote on this next week or the next month to put it out for bid?
We certainly could on the 12th if you're comfortable with that. And what that would be a resolution to go out for RFP. That does not mean, and you would go out for RFP for 15 million if that's the desire. That does not mean A, you're accepting them. B, we're going to like it, the interest rates that come back. Or C, they're going to agree to the terms that we want. There's a lot of variables. But there is no risk in what we are doing except for some small payments,
If you
correct?
put it out for RFP for 15 million,
Yes.
and we say, you know what, I think we'd only like to borrow 10. Is that going to affect that RFP? Does that have to go back out if you're only deciding to do 10?
No, they recommended that we ask for the full amount and then could reduce it as we went forward. So we could ask for an RFP for 15 million, but when the decision came, it would only be 10 or 8 or 12. That's fine.
Okay, and then the other question I have is that, is borrowing more going to affect the interest rate? I mean, it doesn't usually when you buy
Interest
a
rate
house,
on
but,
interest income or interest expense?
I'm sorry?
On interest income or interest expense?
So I know usually you're going to have like, your fees may be affected by the amount that you're borrowing, right? But I'm talking about the interest rate of the loan.
No, they did not indicate that there would be a change in the interest rate of the loan based upon the amount
that
of
we're
the loan.
borrowing.
Correct.
But it could affect how much you can earn on it because you wouldn't be investing as much money, and therefore Could that be effect?
Correct, that would. That was based on the 15 million, yes.
Okay. But would then your fees be lower though? Because it's like, is it done like on like a
Not
points basis?
significantly.
Okay, like I didn't know if it would be done like on a, like do you pay points, which would, you know, be loan, like a loan origination that's based on the size of the loan?
A lot of it are attorney's fees and things like that that go into it, so it is not significantly affected by the amount.
Okay.
I would like to instruct to have an item added to the agenda for next week for us to approve a motion for the board to, or for the board to approve a motion for the administration to go out to RFP to seek a $15 million loan. Is everybody that's present from the board in favor of adding that to the agenda? All right, looks like we have enough thumbs up. Okay, I'd say we're good.
Okay, and we'll also continue to add the resolution for self-reimbursement, because this could take some time. That way it gives us those two options in there. So there'll be two resolutions on there, correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. We're not done. We're going to talk about budget for the 24-25 school year. Now, this is where you help me. I could go through the same presentation I went through before, if you would like to see it. I could do that. But at this point, nothing has changed in that presentation. So what I'm going to do is ask, we're going to put up what that interactive format looks like and kind of walk through that a little bit, because by March the 12th, next Tuesday, that information will come to you and will be shared to you in your email. And that will give you, as well as a question document, to be able to begin that process of asking questions. Our first budget meeting is March 19th. We will tackle, in particular, certain functions that we will categorize at each meeting. And that way we can kind of go through each of the group the functions and go through and tackle those, and then go into our next meeting,
One of the things that I know that the board gets frustrated with when they see these caucus summaries, they see that we spent 126% in one category, we spent 321% in another category. I don't have the detail of what went into creating that budget number. But going forward with this system, we'll have that number, we'll have those items that made up those numbers in the budget. So what we're proposing to give you, for example, this would be athletics. And when you would see that, you would expand, and there are all the different objects for spending money under function 3250, which is athletics. So for example, if you wanted to see salaries and benefits, you'd hit on the hyperlink, and that would take you here. Here's all the salaries and benefits in athletics. Athletic director, want to stay up on that for me? Thanks. So that's all your salaries and benefits for the athletic coaches and trainers and athletic director. You slide down, please. Oh, actually, go back to budget. For example, if you wanted to see water and sewer, you think, why does athletics have water and sewer? Well, there's a porta potty, 3 of them, that we have for the athletic events and on campus. That's $3,960 a year. We don't have to keep jumping in back, but there's some field maintenance, team transportation, dues and fees. So you're going to be able to click on the hyperlink, go to that specific area, and see what the money is being spent for. Does that seem like the kind of information you'd be interested in knowing? Yeah. And then also, I guess the answer would be then, as a board, you know that you're spending $771,000 a year on athletics.
So I guess my question is that after we approve the budget and moving forward, we should be able to see comparison of for athletics of that 700. I'm just going to use this as an example. Of that $771,000, maybe 50,000. So it's 50,000 has been spent, but then we
Yes, you would not, well, you would not see it in this report, but you would see it in another report. Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Moving forward, would we then also year to year the change?
So I should be able to go back and put in a lot of numbers from last year, but for example, last year did not break out salaries and benefits for athletics.
Right. But I meant moving forward though.
Oh, yes, moving forward,
You'd be able to break
historically from year to year, yes.
That'd be awesome.
And I will try to put in historical information from last year as best I can fit it into these categories. So then, as Dr. Fox had said, each week, we would give you different functions. Function would be the A column, and we would give you the different functions that we would ask you to look over and review before that meeting and have your questions ready, that we could discuss those, and over the 3-week time period, we would then go over the complete budget and all the functions.
No. I think that's where that question sheet comes into play too, that we can go in and try to answer those questions ahead of time. But it doesn't mean we're not going to address those questions out in the open too, because they're just as important for all of us to be able to hear. But I think for the person, because if there is somebody who is in fact not able to attend but has good questions or any questions, we are able to put those in there and see those. But yes, we can revisit certain aspects as well. Some categories will move faster than others. Yes, the 19th, the 26th, and April 3rd. Yep, I threw a Wednesday in there just for make sure we're all paying attention. Now, and when we first developed these, April 2nd was a non-membership day, but it is now a day that we will be in school on April 2nd due to inclement. April 3rd is the budget meeting, but we'll be back in school on April 2nd. We lost that Tuesday for weather.
And one last thing, there will be a form that you will all have access to that would allow you to ask your questions. So for example, you would say function 3250, and then you would say new property and equipment 750, click on that, go there, and you'd say, okay, here's our new equipment, weight room expenses, what were you looking to buy there? So there'll be a form that you'll fill out that'll ask you by the function, by the object, and then the specifics, so we'll know exactly what you're looking for answers. Does that make sense? Something similar to what we've had in the past.
Yep.
Thank you for all your work.
Yes, it definitely is a lot of work on the business office. Mr. Holmes, Mrs. Wisen, Mrs. Pinson, Mrs. Feltenberger, Mrs. Montage. So it is certainly a team effort, and you've been carrying a lot of that, working on this, and hopefully this serves as a template moving forward to be able to use and gives us that intuitiveness. So thank you. That's not bad. I think we've done pretty well. Thank you. Thank you for the night. Absolutely. Once again, congratulations, Mrs. Reed. Thank you so much. I look forward to providing an overview and an orientation. I'll reach out to you, and we'll get in contact with that.
All right, you're done, Dr. Fox, right? You want to read that, or you want me to read it?
Sure, I can go ahead and
Oh.
read. I think it might be a little easier here as well. So we have a public comment for Corey Stone, Penn Township. It says, I highly encourage the district to make a coach's contract which would spell out all the work, rules, regulations, pay schedules, and benefits. Workers' compensation, medical coverage to cover all coaches, full-time staff per diem. The per diem term would take the place of part-time volunteer specialists, advisors, coaches, staff members, and any staff member who may opt to refund the district the money received for employment if he or she chooses to volunteer his or her time, but the time they must take the pay first to solidify their status as an employee. All good things we will certainly take a look at in terms of employment, in terms of contract, in terms of position description, making sure that they're all memorialized inside of not just a matrix for not a matrix, in terms of a coach's payment structure, but also in terms of a coach's handbook that specifies a lot of things. And I know we're currently working on that as well to provide guidance to our coaches, especially coaches that are non-educators. Not that that makes a significant difference, but it does when sometimes certain rules and regulations of school, making sure that that's memorialized in there. So some good information here, so we appreciate that. Any public comment? Thank you so much for attending and all your participation. Any comments from administrators? Comments from board members? Stop talking, John. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.